Before a single ton of steel is poured for like a new global headquarters or, a massive offshore wind farm, the project is actually already at risk of a multi-million-dollar disaster.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge vulnerability.
Right. And it's not from bad engineering or supply chain shortages. It is from bad paperwork. Because if you invite the wrong contractors into a high-stakes project, the entire foundation just crumbles before a single shovel hits the dirt.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating problem to reverse engineer. Because, I mean, if an organization just broadcasted a multi-billion-dollar budget to the open market, they would be instantly paralyzed.
Paralyzed by unqualified bids, right?
Exactly, just an avalanche of them.
Yeah.
So you need a system that acts as, well, an impermeable membrane, a filter that only lets the absolute most capable entities pass through.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we're opening up a strictly guarded corporate playbook addressing all of you listening who want to know how massive organizations mathematically eliminate this chaos.
Before a bid is even placed, mind you.
Right. So we have this highly structured corporate blueprint titled the Pre-Qualification Work Process Guideline. And we are going to decode how organizations design a consistent, controlled, and perfectly auditable system to identify contractors.
Specifically contractors who are technically, commercially, and financially capable. And to give you a sense of the rigidity here, this document acts as the narrative counterpart to a highly specific, officially coded flowchart.
Oh, wow. So it's very bureaucratic.
Very. It's officially known as Practice No, CNP P002, Chart No, CNP Key 001. I mean, it is the literal operational DNA for corporate procurement. It dictates every single action an employee is allowed to take.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we look at the actual, machinery of this document, we need to understand the boundaries. What are we actually talking about here, and who is pulling the strings?
Setting the scope is crucial here. This guideline governs everything from compiling the initial massive list of potential candidates all the way to formally communicating the final shortlist.
But it doesn't cover everything, right? The document is very specific about what it excludes.
Right. It explicitly excludes the initial business strategy. So the decision to build that offshore wind farm, that's already been made. And perhaps more importantly, it does not cover the tendering process itself.
So we are strictly in the prequel here.
Exactly. Just the prequel.
We aren't looking at commercial viability or competitive pricing yet. We're purely establishing capability. It's really about answering one fundamental question. Are you even qualified to sit at the table when the real negotiations begin?
Yeah, and once that final shortlist is communicated, this specific guideline's job is completely finished. It hands off to a whole different process.
Okay, so to execute that prequel, the document outlines a very specific cast of characters, right? The whole structure relies on these checks and balances.
It really does. It's entirely built on internal entities pushing and pulling against each other.
I was reading through how these roles interact, and honestly, it reminds me of casting a blockbuster movie. You have these very specific, rigid jobs to ensure no one terrible gets on screen. So first, we have CNP, which stands for Contracting and Procurement.
Right. They're basically the casting directors doing all the legwork.
Exactly. They are the engine of this operation. The document says CNP owns and drives the process. So they compile the lists, they prepare these massive data packages, and they handle all the external correspondence with the contractors.
But CNP doesn't have unilateral power. They report to the approving authority.
Okay, so who are they?
They are the first critical gatekeeper, like a studio executive. The approving authority doesn't do the initial legwork, but they hold the power to just halt the process instantly. CNP absolutely cannot move forward without their explicit sign-off.
They need sign-off on the candidate lists and the evaluation criteria, right? Wait, hold on, though. If CNP are the market experts doing all the heavy lifting, doesn't adding a whole separate tier of executives just bottleneck the process?
Well, yeah, but that's a feature, not a bug.
Really? Why can't the procurement team just make the call?
Because CNP has an inherent bias toward momentum. Their whole job is to keep the process moving. So the approving authority acts as this pressure valve, ensuring CNP's momentum doesn't, override the organization's strategic risk tolerance.
Ah, I see. It's a necessary friction.
Precisely. And then, completely separate from both of those groups, you have the evaluation team.
Right. Our critics in the audition room. They are the technical experts who sit down, analyze the immense amount of data provided by the candidates, and score their responses against a strict rubric.
And importantly, they don't communicate with the candidates at all. They just analyze the data and write the formal reports.
Keeping it objective. And finally, looking over all of this is the tender board. This is the ultimate studio head, basically the final boss.
Yeah, the supreme authority. They review and endorse the final recommendations. Because the evaluation team might have their mathematical favorites, and C&P might package it all up perfectly, but the tender board has to give the final operational blessing.
So we have our cast of characters. How does this heavy machinery actually start up? Let's use a hypothetical here to make it concrete for you listening. Imagine that massive offshore wind farm project.
Okay, classic mega project.
Right. And let's say there's a mid-sized, highly capable firm out there. We'll call them Apex Engineering. And they are hoping to get a piece of this multi-billion-dollar pie. How does Apex even get on the radar?
Well, it begins with C&P casting a very wide but calculated net. They use their market knowledge and, crucially, prior performance records to compile this initial pool of candidates.
What the document calls the long list.
Exactly, the long list. So C&P might put Apex Engineering on this list because Apex successfully completed a smaller, somewhat related project 3 years ago.
Okay, so they have a track record. But C&P can't just take that long list and start emailing these companies, right?
No, absolutely not. They immediately hit that first major decision gate approval from the approving authority.
And reading through the guideline, this is not just a casual rubber stamp. The document mandates this very rigid looping mechanism here.
Yeah, the looping mechanisms is really the foundation of this entire auditable process. So if the approving authority looks at that long list and sees an issue, say they feel Apex Engineering just doesn't have enough deep water experience, they reject the list.
Wow. And the process doesn't just tentatively move forward while C&P tries to fix it in the background?
Nope. It triggers a hard structural loop, a total system halt.
It just completely stops.
Completely. C&P has to revise the list based on the exact comments from the approving authority and formally resubmit it. The operation cannot proceed a single inch until they get a formal documented yes.
You definitely don't just fix it in post when it comes to corporate procurement. So let's say C&P justifies Apex's inclusion, they go through the loop, and they finally get that approval. The long list is greenlit. What is the next step?
Now they have to gauge interest. So C&P sends out a screening letter to sound out the candidate's willingness to tender. The document also refers to this as an expression of interest, or an EOI.
I found the psychology of this phase really compelling, actually, because the list isn't finalized just because the multi-billion-dollar client wants these contractors. The contractors' companies, like our hypothetical Apex Engineering, have to actually want to participate.
Right, it's a two-way street.
But why would a company ever turn down a chance at a multi-billion-dollar contract? It seems crazy.
It comes down to opportunity cost and risk profile. I mean, pre-qualification requires a staggering investment of time and resources from these candidates. We're talking about dedicating whole teams of engineers, lawyers, accountants just for weeks to fill out the paperwork.
Oh, wow, just for the prequel.
Just to get to the starting line. So if Apex Engineering looks at the project scope and realizes, hey, this is going to lock up our best personnel for the next 5 years, or if they suspect the margins will be too thin, they'll simply decline the EOI. It's a strategic calculation for them, too.
That makes perfect sense. You don't want to force a contractor through a multi-month vetting process if they are just going to walk away at the tendering phase anyway.
Exactly. Waste of everyone's time.
So Apex does their internal math. They confirm they are in. And once all the responses are gathered, the document states the list is officially frozen. So what does this all mean for the pacing of the project? Why freeze the list now?
Freezing that list is a vital procedural milestone. Basically, it prevents scope creep.
Got it. It's kind of like trying to conduct a highly sensitive chemical analysis, but someone keeps opening the door and dropping new compounds into the beaker halfway through. You'd never be able to validate your results.
That is a great analogy, actually. By freezing the long list, the organization is dictating exactly who they are dealing with before the heavy paperwork begins. It ensures that every single candidate from this moment on is subjected to the exact same conditions, timelines, and competitive pressures.
So the doors to the room are locked. You have your frozen list of contenders, including Apex Engineering. But now the procurement team faces a new logistical nightmare, right? How do you build a test that fairly evaluates all these vastly different companies?
This is where the process splits into two parallel tracks. On one side, C&P is preparing the pre-qualification package. That's the massive questionnaire and all the supporting technical docs that go to the frozen list.
So we're talking gigabytes of data requirements here.
Oh, easily. And simultaneously, on the second track, CMP and the evaluation team are working together to create the pre-qualification evaluation procedure.
Which is basically the grading rubric.
Exactly. It is the precise mathematical criteria they'll use to judge the capabilities of Apex and everyone else.
And just like before, they hit another gate. The approving authority has to look at this grading rubric and approve it.
Yes. Step 7 in the flowchart.
Right, step 7. And if they don't approve it, we hit another loop where they revise and resubmit. But here is where the document reveals a highly specific and honestly surprising operational quirk.
Oh, the parallel processing. What's fascinating here is how the company optimizes for time. They can actually send the massive test out to the candidates and start collecting their finished papers, but they are strictly forbidden from evaluating those responses until the grading rubric is officially approved.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Wait, isn't that putting the cart before the horse?
How do you mean?
It's like a teacher handing out a final exam to a class and collecting all the finished papers before the school board has even approved the syllabus or the answer key. How does a strict, auditable guideline allow for that kind of overlap? What's the risk and reward there?
The reward is purely time, which in corporate procurement is the single most expensive variable. These pre-qualification packages are incredibly dense. If the organization waited for the grading rubric to be flawlessly approved before even sending the test to Apex, they would add weeks or even months of dead time to the project.
Right, the client is just burning money waiting around.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So they run it in parallel. But the risk mitigation, the ironclad rule that guarantees fairness, is that the judges cannot change the rubric after seeing the candidates' answers.
So they can have Apex Engineering's completed submissions sitting right there on their desk, but they cannot legally open the file and start grading.
A firewall has to remain intact. Because the evaluation team started reading the answers before finalizing the rubric, human bias would inevitably creep in. A judge might see a brilliant technical response from Apex and subtly alter the criteria to favor that specific approach.
Which would unfairly punish all the other competitors.
Exactly. By keeping the criteria approval parallel but forcing it to conclude before evaluation begins, they ensure the rubric is completely blind to the actual submissions.
It locks the judges in. They can't change the rules of the game once they see how the players are performing. It's a remarkable way to balance aggressive project timelines with just absolute auditable fairness.
It really is. And that leads directly into phase 3, the crucible of the process. The responses from the long list are logged, the criteria are finally approved. Now the evaluation team takes over the heavy lifting.
Okay, so let's follow Apex Engineering into this crucible. The evaluation team is using what the guideline calls detailed evaluation sheets to score Apex's submission line by line. But what happens when reality gets messy?
What kind of messy?
Well, let's say Apex submits a massive financial spreadsheet, but they formatted a critical column in a way that leaves their, their debt-to-equity ratio slightly ambiguous. What did the judges do?
Well, in a less rigorous environment, an evaluator might just make an assumption. They might look at Apex's reputation and say, I know what they meant, I'll give them the points. Or they might say, this is confusing, I'm docking points. But this guideline explicitly outlaws assumptions.
So you really cannot just go with your gut.
You absolutely cannot. If something in Apex's package is unclear, the evaluation team must seek formal clarification. And they don't just send a quick email or make an off-the-record phone call. They hold structured clarification meetings, and they strictly document them in clarification minutes of meeting.
Wow, clarification minutes of meeting. It sounds incredibly bureaucratic. But when you think about it, applying this to everyday life, think about any time you've had to hire someone or pick a vendor or even choose a software tool for your team.
Oh, bias is everywhere.
Right. It is so easy to look at a few options and just go with your gut feeling. But your gut feeling is exactly where your personal biases creep in. Having a mandatory detailed evaluation sheet and writing down exact clarification minutes, it stops you from just operating on instinct.
It forces absolute objectivity, and it builds the armor for the organization. It creates an airtight audit trail. Imagine if a year from now, a massive conglomerate that got rejected tries to sue the client, claiming they were unfairly passed over.
Right, claiming favoritism toward Apex.
Exactly. The client doesn't just go to court and say, well, we preferred Apex's vibe. They pull out the approved criteria, the detailed evaluation sheets, the clarification minutes, and they mathematically prove exactly why the decision was made.
It is entirely defensible. Okay, so the evaluation team finishes their scoring, they rank the candidates, they compile all this into a massive pre-qualification evaluation report. But they don't actually have the final say, do they?
No, they do not. They have their favorites, but they have to present their findings to the highest authority in this process. So CMP and the evaluation team take their report and create a contracts board submission to recommend a shortlist to the tender board.
And the tender board is the ultimate final decision point.
They are the final sanity check, yes. They must formally endorse the recommendation. And if they don't, say they spot an inconsistency or strategic risk, triggers Step 13A, the final loop.
Another system halt.
Yep. CNP must rework the recommendation based on the board's feedback and resubmit until they get that endorsement.
Let's assume Apex Engineering survived. The tender board endorses the list and Apex is on it. We hit the final sequence. The shortlist is officially frozen, becoming the final shortlist, and then CMP sends out the final communications.
The shortlist letter and the regret letter.
Right. A shortlist letter to the successful candidates like Apex, and a regret letter to the unsuccessful ones. But why is this specific communication protocol so important?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, sending those specific letters signifies the absolute end of the pre-qualification phase. It is a profound legal firewall.
A firewall between this and the tendering phase.
Yes. Only after those letters are sent does the process hand over to the actual tendering process, which is a completely different guideline. Because if you blur the lines, you open the organization up to massive legal exposure.
Wait, really? How so?
Because tendering involves commercial bids, which cost contractors huge amounts of money to prepare. If an unsuccessful contractor mistakenly thinks they're still in the running and spends $1 million drafting a bid, they'll sue the client to recover those costs when they find out they were actually disqualified weeks ago.
Oh, wow. So the regret letter definitively stops the clock.
It definitively stops the clock.
So let's just briefly recap the journey we just took. We started from a conceptual business need, moved to compiling a frozen long list, navigated parallel processed evaluation criteria, pushed past multiple hard approval gates, and finally landed at the decisive shortlist and regret letters.
All perfectly designed to create an airtight, auditable trail.
And that is exactly why this matters to you, the listener. Whether you're working in global procurement or just trying to organize a complex project in your own life, defining your evaluation criteria before you start judging is the ultimate secret to fair and efficient decision-making.
It really is. Lock down the rubric first.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up, I know you had a thought about this whole process that kind of challenges its perfection.
Yeah, I do want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over. So, this document relies heavily on prior performance records in Step 1 to build that initial long list, right?
Right. You have to prove you've done it before to get an invitation.
But we live in a world where innovation happens at lightning speed. So how does a strictly regulated process like this make room for a brand new, brilliant contractor who just doesn't have a prior performance record yet?
That's a great point.
Does the relentless pursuit of a perfectly auditable process accidentally filter out the most innovative disruptors?
Wow. Are we engineering away our own breakthroughs just to make sure the paperwork is legally defensible? That is a phenomenal question to explore on your own. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of these massive decisions. Until next time, keep questioning the process, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
Download the free PDF work process guideline and flowchart from our website. See the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and see you next time.